Welcome back to BLOCKTV. It's time for Trader's Take. The crypto markets are showing high volatility this weekend, with Bitcoin meeting resistance at $11,000 and the Litecoin halving just a few hours away. It's time to check in with Joe Saz, our technical analyst who is in New York. Hi, Joe. How are you?
Excellent. How are you, Arad?
Great. It's great to have you on. So now things are going crazy. We almost made it to 11. There were some issues there along the way. If you can provide some insight, that would be greatly appreciated.
Yeah, it's getting a little tough right now because everyone, as I've been saying, I think we topped out in that 13.8 range, and this pullback and this kind of slow descent with the 9K support has been leading me to believe that we're creating a descending triangle, and we're looking very similar in that sense to what happened in late 2017 into 2018, going from 20K down to 6. Numerous times, being 6 being the resistance for the bears. So, let's jump in real quick because this is where it's starting to get sketchy. Now, I want to note that this to me is considered organic market activity. It seems like a lot of the very heavy, let's use an example of what isn't.
Well, so wait, just a question.
Like
a little while ago, you kind of were saying that you think this is whale manipulation. Do you still believe that to be true?
I think they've just taken a break right now. I think there's reasons why you'd want to pump, there's reasons why you'd want to dump, and there's reasons why you'd want to, stick on the sidelines for a second.
Okay, so right now what we have going on is a bit more organic.
Yeah, I noticed it a couple days ago, and so these are examples of huge moves in very small time frames. I mean, we can even drop this to 5 minutes, where you can see, and it moved just a bit there. Well, so on a smaller time scale. And when you see these big, gigantic pumps and dumps, you can see that 5 minutes caused all of this volume. So this is likely, in my eyes, a single accumulator, a whale, a pumper, whatever you want to call it. So there's times when you have, and in this case, you have like a single candle takes up almost all the volume, actually two, but a lot of action here. And relative to what we have now, back to the 15-minute chart, which is kind of the slow building, it's kind of like a bulls versus bears, a little more organic. Maybe there are some whales that play, small ones at that, but I think it's possible that it's been a little bit more organic. As you can see, it's not really pumping and dumping with the same intensity that we have been for the past number of weeks. So it's really tough. I think that if we're back into because let's put it like this, even at a certain point, the New York Attorney General's investigation into Tether goes all the way back into 2017. So they're alleging that Tether did have something to do with the 2017 run-up. Now, I think 2017 run-up would have been a lot easier to mask manipulation because of the facts that, one of the main facts that I use is that Coinbase users went from 5.5 million to 12.5 million in the month of December alone. So that shows you that massive quantities of small buyers are going to have a very positive impact on the market for the price. Now, in this particular case, we have, excuse me, almost little to no outside intervention. We have no correlation to Google Trends, and the big question lingering in the air is, where is the money coming from? It's not like there's an ETF on the table, it's been delayed regularly. That's kind of something we're used to. We have India banning FUD, we have Chinese FUD pretty much always going on. We have US regulatory FUD. So the big, and on top of that, we have a much more loud and public case of the New York Attorney General moving against iFinex. So we have these really big things going on in the ecosystem that would make someone like let's use Warren Buffett as an example, right? He's an investor, and obviously investors want to turn money into more money. So why would someone like that, excluding all the other things, just looking at the things that we just put on the table, why would they look at a space that's rampant with this kind of crazy volatility in the external element? Why would someone want to be throwing hundreds of millions, if not billions, into that, right? And right now, it's just that's why I keep questioning, where's the money coming from?
Right, so, and you were saying kind of manipulation, right? That was kind of the theory. Right now it's looking a bit more organic, but also when we spoke a few days ago with Tone Vase, you guys were kind of identifying lower lows and lower highs, but now we're kind of doing a bit better. So just taking it back to the charts, are we still in that kind of territory? Do you see us sinking further, or are we on an up and up?
No, that's where it gets tough. That's where, This is where trading gets really stressful because I'm going to pull us up on the daily. Now on the 15-minute chart, it looks like we're due for a pullback. Hopefully, you know, hopefully for my shorts, we pull back a bit further. But right now, it looks like we're pulling back probably to the 10-4 range. According to this 15-minute chart, things aren't looking great. So that's the 15. Now the daily is where things start getting tough. You can see this line, and this is what we drew with tone. We've just barely broke above this line. We've technically created a higher high and a close. It's kind of important to note that the close isn't really significantly above this line. It could very well just be a little bit of an anomaly. So that's kind of how I'm looking at it. But you have a high, you have a lower high, you have which would make this have a bull trap look, and this be like the equivalent of a high for this run. Bull trap, breakdown, support, which was found a couple times. So a supportive area in the low 9Ks, 96 down to 9K near flat, 9100. So it's getting really hard to say. I mean, I gotta say I'm really shaking in my boots here a little bit because I was really expecting us to treat this setup trend line, the dotted red line right here that is now broken, the moving average, and this previous high to act as resistance, but we broke it. And so now that means that we're, in my eyes, we're leaning slightly bullish if we can maintain this momentum. If we can keep this, if someone could push this candle back up, and we start, you know, we keep creating higher highs, you know, and we're on a 4 of a 9 count, 5 of a 9 count. If we can push and get above this wick, so let's see, get above 10.9, I'm going to say that the case for a continuation of this bull run and this whole action over here will just have been a blip on the radar, and we're probably headed to 15K.
But do you see that happening now with this kind of natural movement we have going on? Do you see that happening, breaking that $10,900 that you were just speaking of? And kind of if we continue moving organically, do you see that happening?
I don't see it happening if we move organically. That's the part of the thing, is like the comparison to 2017. At the point when volatility was at its peak and Tether was less involved in all this, well, the market took us down, right? I mean, all it takes is a bit of momentum in order for us to start swinging heavily to the downside. And so 2 days ago, my momentum indicators went neutral, but then they went bullish again and pushed us from around that 10.3, 10.4 area up to 10.8, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, right? That wasn't a huge move. Last time it took us from 10.6 to 11.120. So, I mean, it's kind of within the reasonable area, and that's why I'm saying this is so risky and it's so hard to trade, because, yeah, we broke through, you know, that 50 MA and those little resistance areas that I was talking about. But, you know, it's kind of like right now with all the volatility going on, I have to take those indicators with a grain of salt. I have to say, all right, you know, I have to trade by hand. I have to say, well, what does the order book look like? What does the momentum look like? What's the sentiment in the space? It was a Friday, it was a Thursday, Saturday, you know, typically days that people have money to spend. You know, so I think that if this red 5 that we're on the daily starts to take us back down and we start rounding out and creating a top, and start building momentum to the downside, I think the people, which without manipulation, are going to do the rest of the work for everyone, you know, pump the market back down.
Right, so definitely very, very fragile. But then if we can kind of move on to XRP, because crypto, you know, a bunch of publications now, headlines are reading that MoneyGram revealed it is now commercially leveraging XRP through Ripple's XRapid for cross-border transactions. Now, I know that you're not a big fan of XRapid. You don't necessarily see that how it can work, but is that news affecting XRP at all?
That's a great point. Let's check it out. Let's see, there's Tron, and here's XRP. Well, it doesn't look like it's doing anything. Let me, I've done this before. I think I forgot to save it. Let me make this into a horizontal array. So here's the channel, and let me save this before I forget. Oh my goodness. All right, hopefully that works. It's not really reaching my mouse. All right, let's see. It doesn't really look great right now. If anything, this actually has a very similar look to Ethereum, and when we talked about that flagpole and the pennant formation, we have basically a very similar thing going on. A huge crash, and this being the flagpole, this kind of being the flag. Now we're in the reliable trade zone. It doesn't look like that external narrative in particular has done anything bullish for the price. Um, I think it's hard to say. I mean, XRP, they pull out $1 billion every month and they sell it, or they don't sell. Sometimes they put it back, which is another part of the problem in my eyes with XRP. But right now, I'm not really seeing anything um, telling me that that external narrative is driving us up. In fact, more importantly, I know I don't typically lean on moving averages with XRP because I think it's a little more I think it's just, it's pretty volatile. Even though we have this reliable channel, I think moving averages in this particular case aren't the biggest thing to rely on. But we have a bearish crossover of the intermediate and short-term moving average. That's the 50 and 125 on my screen, 50 being this orange line, 125 being purple. And the 50 is coming down fast, which means we're probably going to hit the 200 in a matter of weeks, maybe 2 or 3. Assuming this holds. Even if we go sideways and this starts to flatten out, it'll just mean that we have a more delicate landing into this blue line, which is the 200 moving average. So XRP is just kind of looking neutral to me. It just depends on how we break out of that flag that I just drew. If we break to the downside, it's very possible that this setup trend line that's been holding us for, I mean, months, since as long ago as December 2018 when we started this huge pump.
But do you see that as some good news or some bad news? Because some would say that the fact that XRP wasn't necessarily affected by this news is actually indicative of some good news.
It's really tough because people that understand and truly understand XRapid, I think to them they would look at this and say it's not really, it doesn't mean much. I mean, it did MoneyGram, they kind of had a partnership. Did Ripple give them a bunch of XRP to use as the intermediary somewhere? I'm just not 100% sure. I don't think this is bullish. I don't really see, again, a use case for XRapid. Again, they're trying to build on top of the existing banking architecture, right? And the existing banking architecture with fractional reserve banking, money printing abilities from the Federal Reserve and central banks worldwide, but trying to build on top of that existing architecture, I believe is going to fail in the long term when you have alternatives. And Bitcoin is like the biggest, strongest alternative. And you now have functioning Lightning network. So you have instantaneous, I regularly send people 1 Satoshi, the smallest unit of a Bitcoin. And I send it from a Lightning wallet and I load up their Lightning wallet. And it happens by the time I turn my head to see if the transaction has been confirmed, the Satoshi has reached their wallet.
But then why do you think that banks, I mean, there's no arguing that XRP, Ripple in general is partnering. They're successful with luring banks in. So what do you think the appeal is there? If you say that Bitcoin now has Lightning Network, it does the same thing and it could be better. What is the appeal then with XRP's XRapid, with Ripple's XRapid?
Well, that's the thing. I kind of have a couple thoughts on it. One is XRP is basically paying, Ripple, the company, is basically paying banks to try things out. And they'll say, hey, we'll give you, 100 grand just so we can add your name to a headline, right? Or more probably. But I think that's very likely in the cards. I think it's very possible that Ripple Labs could be enticing financial institutions to participate in practicing these things and trying to get involved with their ecosystem, the same way that Litecoin, for example, was trying to get or successfully got the MMA involved with their altcoin, right? So I think it could be as simple as that. It could be a little more nefarious. It could be maybe that the existing financial institutions don't quite understand the space. They just think that what we need is faster cross-border payments, and it could be as simple as them saying, oh, this is working, let's try this out. Bitcoin doesn't. We have on-chain issues, especially during high congestion times. So it could be as simple as that, or it could be groups like the IMF trying to say Bitcoin's a threat. What's the best competitor, the next best competitor? And maybe in their eyes it could be XRP. It's something that they can easily work with. There's only about 80 or so validating nodes. So if more validator nodes pop up, then that means people will have a say, and that could be anyone. That could be the SEC, like we just saw. The SEC is going to now be running a Ripple node. That'll constitute 1-point-something% of existing, or potentially, I don't know if they're running a validator node or just a regular node. But right now, the consensus in Ripple is it requires very few participants to vote on some sort of implementation. So
yeah, with all respect, I mean to the SEC, that statement, I don't know if you'd read it. It seems that they don't know whether they're running a validator node or what kind of node they're. Again, going back to kind of crypto education and how people who are in charge need to get their shit together, so to speak, to learn about what they're trying to control.
Yeah, I mean, we have regulators months behind. We had Fidelity, a massive financial institution, running the Lightning node months ago, right? So, I mean, it's really hard to say, like with Ripple and the potential outcomes. I think that, yeah, trying to build on top of the existing architecture might work, but why would the richest people on earth that are, that own the central banks and control, because central banks typically, particularly in the US, I can't speak for the rest of the globe, but the Federal Reserve is a third-party entity. It's not owned by the people of the United States. So the US dollar says Federal Reserve note on top, not property of the people of the United States. So we have to borrow that note, print it through the Treasury, and that costs the taxpayer money to borrow the note, money for the Treasury, the raw goods and services and associated with printing the dollar. So there's all these intermediary costs, and just what in the time that a dollar is thought of and a dollar is printed. And so, XRP trying to build on this ecosystem is potentially something that's less threatening to them. But on that other hand, why would those people that are already making tons and tons of money through the Federal Reserve Act of 1913, why would they want to give up all this power that they have, financially speaking, to a small group of people that have 55% control of the escrow, in addition to 20% of the pre-mine that was given directly to the founders? So essentially, why would the most powerful financial powers in the world want to give all of that power over to a cryptocurrency?
Well, at least now with MoneyGram, there's kind of this use case with XRapid, and we can actually see what ends up happening. There wasn't much details given there in terms of transactions and what they're actually doing and what they have completed, but they have announced that they are partners, and it is kind of like a chance for us to see and kind of form our opinions, I think a bit more, so that they're a bit more educated opinions and not just kind of everything in the air and speculation. But if we can kind of move. Sorry, Joe?
People even use Dogecoin, is all I'm saying. XRP paying for all these people or whatever they're doing to get names on board doesn't really move me too much. But sorry,
we'll find out, Joe. It's okay. You can try it out and see and form more opinions, and we can see what goes on there. But then kind of moving on into Litecoin, we thought there was going to be a jump, but there has not been a jump. Actually, Litecoin is tanking. There's 23 hours left until the halving. And we're dropping. Yep.
I gotta say this one was still. I'm gonna let my Litecoin ride go a little bit further. Trust me, I'm willing to exit the heck out of this. Okay, so I'm not trying to support Litecoin. It's complete trash to me. I was only in it for the money, for the pump. If I lose money, even if I break even, I'm gonna be okay with it. But we're seeing absolutely nothing here. We're seeing a distinctly lower high, a pretty neutral spinning top, followed by this is a 10% move to the upside, spinning top 4%, and we're pretty much just rejecting all this upside action that we had. Can this be front runners expecting a run to like 120 or even higher? Very well could be. But right now we're just not getting that action. What is all this red side then, right? It's not just going to be, whales can't just make money off of each other. It's not just as easy as that. You need some organic market activity in the middle. You need suckers to buy. If you pump from down here, say you're a whale, you pump from down here, you need suckers to buy all this so that you can sell up here, right? Now it looks like we've ended a lot of this action. If this was the front running, then and we're sitting in some pretty bearish territory. People are going to start getting scared. I'm willing to wait maybe 3 days or so into this, maybe a week, but I'm not going to sit on this too long. We're just hours out and nothing's happening. In fact, we're looking, like I said, more bearish. We now have a setup trend line working against us. The intermediate term moving average is capping us out at this previous high. So it's just looking bad to me on the technical picture, and the external narrative isn't driving anything. I mean, I'm really curious about this. This is
when do
kind
you
of
think we would see something, assuming that there would be any movement that was positive?
In my eyes, this definitely. Go ahead.
No, I'm saying when do you think we would see that?
We might have already.
You're saying that we've already experienced that, and from here it's downhill.
It very well could be, yeah. I think it's hard to say. I mean, right now on the weekly, we're sitting on an inverted hammer. Where's the last time? I mean, here was a hammer we pumped up. It's just hard to say right now. I really was expecting much more bullish price action on Litecoin. Here's the 9 sell, 1 to 4 candle pullback. So technically speaking, according to sequential, it's very possible that if we're playing things out technically, then we're supported around here, but I mean, around this $70 range. But again, this isn't the 300x altcoin or 300% increase that you would typically see in something like an altcoin season that some people have been talking about. And this would have been a perfect spark to start that fire. A Litecoin halvening, one of the top 10 cryptos by market cap, this would have been the perfect time to instigate some sort of, serious belief that there's an altcoin season around the corner.
There were expectations here that weren't necessarily met.
Yeah, and so I mean, talking about trying to play into emotion, we're looking at the opposite. This could have just been this could very well just have been a big mistake on my part to think that Litecoin was going to pump and maybe do a little move to 120, 150. Anything was on the table. Honestly, in crypto, anything is on the table. We could have jumped up back to all-time highs in 3 weeks, with Litecoin. Anything could have happened. But what did happen is back to the charts here, we crashed, broke down viciously from the 50 moving average, broke through the intermediate terms, we're fighting it again and lost, breaking down a distinctive lower high. I mean, this is just looking bad. Now, last time something like this happened, though, I just want to point out quickly on Ethereum, when we had that flagpole situation in Ethereum, and right now Litecoin is looking very similar, just in an inverted sense. Oh, this is the weekly, that's why I can't see it. Oh no, where'd you go? Let's also change this to Ethereum US dollar. So a quick note here. When we had this flagpole and we had the very similar, I'll just draw this out quickly so it doesn't look like a complete mess. We had the same formation, right? Flagpole and the flag. We broke out and we had a lot of weird stuff go on until we finally made up for all that space. Let's start the flagpole here, end it here. And so the theory is that when we break, we make it about that high. And you can see that we did. So it's possible that with Litecoin, back over here, what we have is a flagpole that starts around here, and we did break out to the upside out of this triangle. So it's very possible that we have a move here, like I said, to around about 120, and this just might be a little fumbly to get there. So I'm very skeptical. I think this is really interesting, and this is going to play into a lot of interesting research according to what halvenings and external hypes like scarcity. Because think about it, so many people are resting on the Bitcoin May 2020 halvening, and I mean, the thing is, this is a trader-driven space for the most part. So typically at any space, about 2 or 3% of the circulating supply of the asset is what drives the price, and that 2 to 3% is typically traders trading. So right now what we have is a halvening that could completely go unnoticed, which would mean are all halvenings the same thing that we thought they were for the past 10 years. With Bitcoin, they've typically led to serious bullish activity. What if we go, if Litecoin halvening is completely insignificant, and even worse, we crash down into 50, into 25, and maybe lower, what does that mean for the Bitcoin halvening in May 2020 that everyone's really resting a lot of weight on?
Right, there are a lot of questions even when it comes to that May 2020 date, right? Because we've learned now that it's something like, 85% of all Bitcoins have already been mined, and so it's kind of questioning what's going to happen around that date. Definitely a lot of speculation, which is why we have you, Joe Saz, BLOCKTV's technical analyst. Thank you very much for breaking down the charts for us. For all of you folks at home, keep watching for more crypto and blockchain news.
For more news and updates, follow us on Twitter.